Today I'm going to show you how to take a SVG file and turn it into an awesome flexible design using Tinkercad. So let's get cracking. Alright, so if you've already completed either my Flexi snake or my Flexi names, then you've already got the template for the connector. If not, it's time to make that connector. Let me show you how to do it. Step one is to visit Tinkercad.com. This is the homepage. All of your designs are stored to the cloud. I always choose sign in with Google. Really quickly, if you completed those other tutorials, this is where you would find your template. Right now, I'm going to show you how to build that. We start by hitting create new 3D design. Step one for me in Tinkercad is to give it a name. Once again, we're going to call this Flex SVG. Right now, when we click down here, it has already been saved to the cloud. Let me show you real quickly. When we bounce back here, you can see this is our project. Of course, at the moment, it is blank. To get back into it, you simply hit Tinker this. So real quickly, this does work with text. I'm going to just put the word lions here. I do recommend you make it all caps. But once again, today, we're going to play with an SVG file instead. We are going to build our Flexi system today with the torus. Now we want one standing up and we want one laying down. Of course, laying down is super simple. Notice it fits in a 20 by 20 grid. That would be a radius of 10. Well, check it out. If you add the radius plus the tube, that is the 10, which gives you a diameter of 20. Now the number that we want is 3. And then we also need one of these vertical. Now we could rotate this one, but instead I'm going to do this, where I bring it out on a flat spot. I'm going to put that number 3 and press enter. And then I'm going to click down here to get rid of the living work plane and hit D to drop. So these are the two parts that we're going to use to connect everything together. Now for easy printing, we need this one to be flattened on the bottom. So I'm just going to bring out the whole cube. I'm going to set the height to 1 and press enter. And then when we bring this underneath that shape, I'm going to shrink it closer to the correct size. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it also doesn't have to be that big either, and do Control G to union group. That's floating, but we can fix that by hitting D to drop. Now this one needs to be tilted. The number of degrees I'm going to tell you is 25. Simply move it to whatever number you want and then type it in the box. I'm doing -25 for the way I've got it rotated right now. And then I'm going to hit D to drop so that that's at the correct height. Those two link inside each other. We'll line them up in a minute. Now, instead of trimming this one so it's flat, we're going to bring out a support. Simply grab the pyramid and then do Shift Shrink. And I'm going to go all the way down to size 3. I'm going to make it wider and then just slide it into that area. Let's select all of that and do L for align. And it doesn't matter which one you pick. We want it to be centered. I'm going to make sure the point is below. But you can see that is now a nice base for that print to start. And if you check quickly, there is a gap all the way around for the two pieces. And I'm just going to stay with that gap right there. Now we're going to use this to connect all these letters. Even though right now they're one piece, when we print it, they will all be separate. But they will be linked with these. And we're going to create an awesome bundle group using the half sphere that cuts out the area so these actually still flex. Let's do Shift Squeeze and get this down to size 5. I'm going to move it into this place and make it a hole. Now we want it to be less than this piece right here, and we want it to be into this piece 1 click. I'm going to switch my nudge to 0.25, and I just want to make sure that I don't cut into that piece. Let's do a quick bit of alignment. I'm going to Shift Select the hole and the blue one, choose L for align, and we want it to be in the center. Now I'm going to just grab this, and I'm going to come out at least 1 millimeter, maybe 2. And the same way over here, 1, maybe 2. So I'm just making sure I've got area to the left and the right so that this has space, and I'm making sure that this is going to cut out. Now here's where it gets magical. Grab all of these and do Control B to make a bundle group. As a bundle, this hole cannot cut any of the other parts that are in the bundle. If we add it to another part and group it, that hole will cut it. I'm going to show you this real quick before we go and make this into the template. If I line that up, I'm going to real quickly do L for align and center. Let's click on this one and do F to fit view. and we want to make sure that this gap exists after the project is nudged. I'm going to set my nudge to 0.25 and just get it close to center. And then this is where it gets really cool. If we grab these two and do Control G, you get to see the union group where there is now an opening between those parts. That hole trimmed all the other parts, but it did not affect these. That is the system that makes this all possible. Now we want to take this and make it a template that we can use forever. To do that, we're simply going to back out. We're going to click up here on the gear and we're going to choose duplicate. When it loads, let's change this to something that is more accurate. I'm going to just call it Flex Template. Of course, making sure I spell it correctly. And then when we back out, we are going to click on the Flex Template gear and we're going to add it to a collection. If you do not have a collection yet, make a new one. I have made a collection called templates, so I can just add it to the selection. So on a later date, when I want to make one of these, I can simply go to collections, choose templates, and I do not want to wreck my real template. Instead, I want to do duplicate. So I've got an exact copy of the project and it has the part in it. Now, once again, this goes back to my other tutorials where I did text. Today, we're going to do it with an SVG. So let's go track one down. I'm going to quickly celebrate the Detroit Tigers, so I did a Tigers logo. Of course, I do want images. All right, so this is the style I want. Quite often, I screen capture this. Today, though, let's click on this little fella. If we look closely, it's free for personal use, coloring pages, which is exactly what I'm doing. We can download it by simply clicking right here. I'm going to change the name to Tigers logo and hit save. Now, I want to edit that, so I'm going to visit Pixlr real quick. Pixlr, and we simply launch Pixlr, and then I am going to do, I always choose sign in with Google, and then I simply want to use Pixlr Express. We're going to open design, and of course I want that Tigers logo we just grabbed. Now I want to modify this by erasing the word Detroit. Let me show you how I'm going to do it. We simply hit cutout. I'm going to use the magic cutout. I'm going to use remove. I've got contiguous on. That way it only gets rid of the pieces that I'm touching. Pop, 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 pop. And we can wipe out those blue pieces. I also want to wipe out the white. Notice this leaves the parts inside. That is fantastic. Just trust me, it'll be more handy when we get into the next part of the project. To get rid of these pieces, I'm going to simply switch to the paint tool, make this brush large, and shut off the softness. Now I can easily click and get rid of those. If you need to make it smaller, like I'm worried about clicking other pieces, it's this easy. Bang. Now I want this to all be one color. I'm going to do that by simply switching to the paint tool. I'm going to choose to make it the color black. Once again, I'm going to make this nice and large, no softness, and bang. We can fill these all in. Notice no matter where I click, it just covers that shape. So with this complete, we're simply going to go down here and hit save. I'm going to save it as a JPEG because I do not need the transparency. And I'm going to save it to my downloads folder. And I'm going to call it Tigers logo. But I'm going to put the word one color and hit save. It is good to remember using the free version. You only get 3 saves per day. So make sure you use it smartly. Now we're going to visit a website, picsvg.com. Of course, we need to upload that picture. There is my one color logo. Notice when it first comes in, it traces the edges. I want to instead switch to internal number 2 because once again, I want this solid color. I'll show you why in just a moment. We're going to download. I'm going to stay with the silly name and I'm going to save it. We've got our connector. Now we simply need to import our SVG. I'm in my downloads. There is my file. I'm going to choose art. I'm going to choose to make this 85 millimeters across. It changes this dimension automatically and we can hit import. There is our fun Tigers logo after a few steps. It has awesome things like fill mode, outer line, and inner line. This is where we get to add that line to the outside. I'm going to simply do outer line. I'm going to do round. I'm going to do 1 millimeter for the size, not 41, and press enter. And I'm also going to bump the quality all the way up. Since it's a Tigers logo, I'm going to make that part look orange. And then if we do Control D a second time, I can click on the second one, and I'm going to make it the default. So we've got the tigers on the inside. I'll make it a blue. See if we can find a tiger's blue. And I'm happy with that. And then I wanted this to print a little faster. So here's something I did. This is 7 millimeters tall. That's how it was built. So I grabbed these two and I changed them to both be 7. That way it would be sitting underneath. And then to make it easier to paint, I took this one and I made it 7.1 and pressed enter. That's easier when we go into Bambu Studio for printing. All right, so right now, if you're looking at this, these letters are obviously connected, and we're going to put these parts in between. We need them cut. Let me show you how we're going to do that. We simply bring out the sketch tool. I am going to line it up to a 20 by 20 grid, just because I want you to see that. Notice the dotted line lines up right in the middle. It isn't essential for this project, but I want you to know it for later. Now remember, we want to slice each letter apart. All we're going to do is click to start that slicing, press number 2 to make a Bezier curve, click where you want it to twist, and then when you're done, hit escape. It automatically draws the curve stroke. Notice you can double click to edit that. If we click on these curves, there are handles that you can adjust. If the numbers are in the way, you can simply disable those measurements just like that. I'm going to grab this point and stretch it a little bit. And then I'm also going to go down to the stroke settings, and to cut these in half, I simply want to use the number 1 for the distance that gets cut. Now I want to reuse this again and again, and we can simply do Control C and Control V. Do make sure that you grab the one that's to the right, and then simply double click to edit the points to get it to where you want that part to cut as well. You do not have to be perfect. You just need to get them cut. If you need an extra point, you can press number 4. That does add and remove points. You do need to hit V to shut that off, so then you can move that point where you want. These are called broken handles. You can get those by using the number 3. If you want to go back to smooth, you can use number 2. Broken handles let you adjust them independently. If you're doing number 2 for smooth, they are connected. I don't want that, so I'm going to do Control Z to undo, and then simply get these points to where I want them to be. There's my number 3, independent, and I'm going to have that cut right through there. Once again, this does not need perfection. You just need to split these somewhere. I'm going to choose like that. Once again, Control V, and it moves all the way over here. Let's get this one in place. Double click to edit it. I'm going to grab that point and move it this way and use the handle to bend it through there. Just cutting that in half. Once again, Control V, and cutting this over here as well. I think that's going to be fine. Once again, I'm not super picky. I just wanted them to be cut. You can cut them however you want. I'm going to simply hit Finish Sketch. You can see all those pieces right there. I'm going to make them into a hole. And when I grab all of this and do Control G, the red lines mean it is a union group, which takes time for Tinkercad to compute. But just like that, it is cut into separate pieces. Now our letters do have the gap we need. Once again, if you don't like the gap, like I think I want this E to be cut different, I can double click and double click so I'm inside it editing. And then when I grab that point, I can adjust it however I want. I think this is actually a cooler cut. Of course, I finish the sketch, and then I simply click outside to finish the edit. I think that's close, but I do want this line to show up out here, so I'm going to double click again to edit that. And I just want to make sure that this line stays right in between those two. Now I can do that with this curve right here. That means I'm going to have a little bit of that on both sides. Once again, finish sketch, and double click outside to complete the edit. And I'm going to repeat those steps one more time just to get this part exactly the way I want. All right, so it's time to add our cool bundle group, but we're going to make a modification. Do Control D, F to fit view. And when you double click to edit this, we're going to take this hole and we're going to stretch it all the way out to 7. And then I'm going to slide it back till it touches this edge too. So it ends up being about 7.6. So it's just going to these edges. Once again, when we click outside, that's just going to give a larger hole, but it's still not going to cut the yellow or the blue parts that are bundled. Now we can put these in place. Once again, Control D. I'm going to move them over here, and then I want to click on my orange one, and I'm going to lock it. That way I don't accidentally grab it. I'm going to set my nudge at 0.25. I am going to switch to flat view. That way we're directly on top of the design, and we can simply grab that part and drag it into place. Now we want to make sure that we have this yellow piece on this side of the part. We are going to click the rotation handle to make sure it lines up just like that. If we can see part of this opening right here, we know that those parts are going to be separate. I'm going to pan a little bit. You can push in the scroll wheel to pan, or you can use the shortcut keys. Then we're going to do Control D and shift nudge towards the other spot. Once again, when you can see it, you can grab it and just drag it into place. Once again, just making sure the yellow is on the left side and the blue parts are on the right. So we're just splitting that up like that. When you're happy with the exact placement, you can simply do Control D and move it to the next one. Now, once again, most of your designs will probably be straight. I chose this one that was slanted, so it makes it a little more tricky. We simply repeat those steps for each of the other letters. Got a little bit of the yellow peeking out, and then finally one last Control D, and then this will be where we connect the keychain. And now I'm going to switch back to perspective view. Let's bring out the tube. I'm going to tell you the numbers I like to use for the tube are 6, 3, 2 for the bevel, and 10 for the segments. I'm going to change the height of this to 5 and press enter. Bring it into place, F to fit view, and make sure I like how that connects. I do want to make sure there's a gap there, and there's a gap over here. Now, friends, it's time to group it. Of course, we do need to unlock this shape, and then we can grab all 8 parts and do Control G to group. Now, since this is a union group, it does take time. It is cutting all those fancy shapes in. It's kind of fun to watch from underneath. And bang, that's what it looks like when it cuts out. If we look from underneath, you can see now there is an opening on each side where these rings are poking out, and our design will end up being flexi. How cool is that? Let's get it ready to be sent to the printer. Once again, select the parts you care about. Let's choose Export STL. I'm going to save mine in my 3D modeling folder, and I'm going to call it Tigers Flexi, and hit save. Of course, now let's bounce to Bambu Lab Studio. I'm going to create a brand new project. Let's add our design. Once again, it is called Tigers Flexi. I'm going to right click on this little fella and change the filament to the orange for the outside. And then we're going to use the awesome paint tool to paint the blue by simply clicking the fill bucket, edge detection, and then bang, we can fill those in that easily. Of course, once we're done with that, you can check underneath to see those connectors. They are all looking awesome. Let's hit slice plate. As you can see, it's going to take under 40 minutes, and let's hit print plate. Double check our colors and send it to the 3D printer. Now, while we're waiting for that print to conclude, let's do a couple things here. First, Control C to copy that new template. I'm also going to put a note right here just so I remember V2 with a little more clearance. Probably needed because this was at an angle. If it was straight, the other one was working just dandy. Now I'm going to quickly change the name by clicking up here and type in Tigers Flexi Keychain. I'm going to go back to my main area, and I copied that connector. I'm going to go back into the collections, and we're going to modify this one to add it. If we simply hit Tinker this, it remembers what I just copied, and if I do Control V, I can paste it. Once again, I'm going to add a note, N, and I'm going to just put V2 with larger clearance. Once I back up, that template is updated. You can see now there's the 2 pieces, and now both will be available anytime I use the template. And less than 40 minutes later, we have got a Flexi keychain. Once again, all possible because of the sweet Tinkercad bundle groups and being able to cut an SVG with the sketch tool. How cool is that? All right, so let's quickly review everything we learned. Of course, we went into Tinkercad, we made a connector. We then turned it into a template so we could use it later. Then we tracked down an image that we wanted to make into an SVG. Of course, once we grabbed that image, we had to edit it with Pixlr before finally we went to pick SVG and turned it into an SVG. Once we imported that into Tinkercad, that was when we busted out the Epic Sketch tool to cut it into separate parts. Of course, then we took a moment to arrange the bundle groups so that we'd have connectors. Finally, of course, we printed our wicked Flexi keychain. And of course, that made this video just a little bit longer. But of course, once you practice these skills, you'll make keychains much faster. Now, friends, if you do make a better connector, please take a moment to share it with me if you ever make a design public and tag it with HLMT23. I check those designs every day, and of course, I'll give you a reaction. Friends, I do want to say thank you to all of my supporters via YouTube memberships. Don't forget there are 3 different levels of support, starting as low as $5 a month. Of course, with any level of support, you get early access to videos. Also, a huge shout out to my Patreon members. Love how that group is growing. We are past 225 members. It has an awesome messaging area. It's a fantastic place to ask questions and learn. Of course, you can learn more with the bit.ly up above or the link in the description. Finally, friends, I want to thank you for watching. Don't forget, every time you hit that like button, share a video, add a comment down below, or click subscribe. You're helping HLModTech get just a little bit bigger, which absolutely makes my day. Friends, have a glorious day and keep tinkering.